Well, hey everyone, welcome. I believe the participants are now able to start joining. This is very exciting. I can start to see faces arriving on my screen, which is great news. Kirsty, how are you doing? I can see David there. I'm not going to lie, I can't see that many faces because I've got the spotlight screen right in the middle of what I'm looking at. So the major face in my field of vision is currently my own, which is a slightly disturbing prospect. But I think it's one that we've all learned to work with over the past few months, haven't we? Seeing a lot more of our face than any of us would probably, our own face than any of us would probably desire. Welcome to, this is the Professionals Breakout. We'll give a couple of minutes for everyone to start joining and getting involved, and then we can introduce the session and go from there. I'm very excited about this next hour or so. Great to see a few people joining, lots of familiar faces, which is excellent. We've got some amazing guests to speak to over this next hour. We've also got the chat, which I'm hoping that over the course of this next hour or so, you guys can start using the chat in order to, a whole load of reasons. You can say all of the like, that's good, that's a great point. You can do all of that sort of like, as if you were there in the room. But at the same time as well, because we've got some great guys that we're going to speak to in a minute, if you have questions, you can start popping them in the chat as we go and as we talk. I won't take questions like literally as they come up, but we've set aside sort of 15 or 20 minutes at the end, depending on how many questions that we've got, where we can start going through your questions as well. So hopefully the aim is that this breakout ends up being a little bit interactive. And you're actually able to say, look, you're hearing something from what the guys are saying. It's either stirring something in you or you've got a question. Just throw it in the chat and then we can take on those as we go. I hope you've enjoyed Young Leaders Lab so far. Last night's session I thought was brilliant. An amazing introduction and great to hear from Gary. That conversation with Anna about cancel culture I thought was just absolutely fascinating and a brilliant perspective on it as well. And then all of the ministry breakouts this morning as well. So I'm sure a whole load of you have already been to one breakout today, and this is breakout number 2. So it's great that we can somehow do a conference online, which is a little bit of an experiment for us, but I like it. I think it's a different vibe. It's a good vibe, but I'm going to wait just maybe a couple more minutes. I can see that loads of people have started to join now. We've got 35 or so. Amazing. I'll get the chat up and running. It's multitasking, that is. The concept of this professionals breakout is it's going to cover a whole range of things, actually, but a real chance to have a think about the business and the corporate spheres, and especially in the context of the emerging generation, the generation coming up, young people, and how we can make a difference, how we can make an impact, whatever your sphere of influence is. Everyone's got a sphere of influence, regardless of what your job role is, regardless of whether you would consider yourself senior in your organization or junior in your organization. You've got people that you can make an impact on, and in a working scenario, in the working sphere. And so the whole idea of this session in the context of Young Leaders Lab is to just think and to throw some ideas around of what does it mean to empower young people, to bring through the talent, bring through people that maybe don't have the privilege or the resources that others in their age group might have, especially. How can we help people just to, young people to come through in our industries, to gain experience, to gain opportunities, to have role models. There's so much that we can be thinking about in the context of work and young people. And so that's what we're going to get into a little bit today, which I think is pretty exciting. When that clock hits 1:05, we're getting after it. We're going to go for it because I want to make sure that the two guys that we're going to hear from today have got the most amount of time and that they're able to speak and share their immense wisdom with us. A few people entering the meeting room now. It's great. I wonder if I can, hold on, I'm just using my own technological vibes here to just flick through and see who's around. Wonderful. Great to have you all here. seeing many names and people that I recognize, and I would call you all out, but again, I would probably waste time. So let's get into it. I think, welcome. This is now the official welcome. Before was me rambling, but welcome to the Professionals Breakout for Young Leaders Lab. It's amazing to have you here. I really hope that you've been enjoying the conference so far, that you've been getting something out of it, that you've been taking some notes. As we believe, like if you've been a part of our church for any length of time, you know that we are a church that really values the younger generation, the emerging generation, because we're fully aware that you guys, if you're here and you are a young person, you are the future leaders of our society and our culture. And therefore, for anyone in an older generation, we have a responsibility and a part to play to make sure that you guys have got the opportunities to use your giftings in the way that we believe that God has gifted you, and to do what we can do to play our part with our sphere of influence in the working world, in the world out there where that needs Jesus so desperately, to use our influence and to use our legacy, if you will, to make sure that the younger generation has got a platform to stand on, that we're seeing young men and women of God entering into industry, entering into the workplace in order to make a difference for Jesus, to build God's kingdom, to build his church, and at the same time to then make a difference on the people that they have around them. It's how I believe the church is built. We say it a lot in our church, but ministry is not a calling for those that are pastors. I'm not the only one in ministry on this call just because I happen to be employed by the church. Ministry is your calling wherever you are. And so whatever industry, whatever workplace you find yourself in, God uses you in that place. You are his representative. You are his ambassador in that place. And you are in ministry wherever you are. Ministry is just about being a witness to the gospel of Jesus, to demonstrate his love, to be his hands and his feet wherever you go. And I was reading this scripture this morning, and I want to use this scripture to frame this breakout before I introduce the guests to you. Because I believe that this scripture, you've probably heard it preached a number of times if you're from a church context. But I want to put a slightly different slant on it this afternoon so that you can sort of get an understanding of where we're going to go with this today. And it's from 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 12. And it says this: Paul is talking to his protege, Timothy, and he says, famous verse, "Let no one despise you for your youth, but set the believers an example in speech and in conduct and in love and in faith and in purity." I'm going to read that one more time. 1 Timothy 4, verse 12. "Let no one despise you for your youth, but set the believers an example in speech, in conduct, in love, in faith, and in purity." And often you've probably heard this verse preached to speak to young people within the context of the church. And it's a very inspiring, it's an encouraging verse about don't let anyone look down on you if you're young. And that's amazing, and it's all relevant. But just today, I want to bring this thought to the table, that it was Paul that was speaking this to Timothy. Paul was standing in the role of a mentor. Paul was standing in the role of someone that was bringing someone younger than him through, being someone that was discipling someone younger than him and teaching him the ways of the gospel, the ways of the kingdom, and encouraging him to make a difference in the world. And this is very much what this Leaders Lab Breakout is all about as professionals. Now, I know on this call there are Timothys, there are young people, but also there are a whole lot of people that have the potential to be a Paul. There's a whole lot of people on this call that you have the potential to be someone that is speaking to the younger generation with language like, "Let no one despise you for your youth, but set the believers an example in speech, in conduct, in love, in faith, and in purity." We've got a little bit of sound coming through from somewhere. If you've got your sound on, maybe just mute it for now. But do you see my point here? Rather than just seeing this from the point of view of Timothy, today we're looking at it from the point of view of Paul. And we're saying we are believing for a generation of mentors, a generation of people that speak with this level of encouragement to a younger generation, a generation of people that say there's a group of people coming up behind me that are younger than me, and I want to be involved in getting into their lives, into discipling them, into providing them opportunities, and fanning into flame, if you will, the gift of God that is on the young people within our community and within our society. That's what we're here for. And so let me stir you, let me encourage you. Perhaps you've never thought of yourself as a mentor before today, but like I said right at the start, everyone has influence over somebody. And in fact, I believe studies show that most of us have influence over between 12 to 15 people directly. And therefore, there are people within your life right now that are younger than you that you can have an impact on. And that's where I believe we're going to frame this session through the eyes of wanting to be a bit like a Paul in whatever sphere of influence that you are in. So with no further ado, with that framing of the session, hopefully you guys understand where we're coming from for this next hour or so. I'm going to ask our two phenomenal panel guests to switch on their camera. Somewhere on here, we have Jeff Lestz and we have Bill Dost. And so those guys are going to switch on their cameras and you'll be able to see them in a second when they're spotlighted. These are two men who have been around our church for many, many years. They are men that not only have demonstrated what it looks like to be faithful servants of Jesus, but they are also guys who have made an incredible impact within the business world. These guys are the pros. They've been doing it for years. They both run their own enterprises. Both of them are authors. Both of them are speakers. Both of them are incredible entrepreneurs. They've walked the walk. They've done the journey. And so today we're just going to hopefully just sit and take in some of their expertise, their thoughts on this season with everything going on with COVID and what that looks like for young people, but also as well, they're going to encourage us and inspire us as to what it means to make an impact on the generation that's behind us. But I don't want to sort of steal all of their thunder. I'm going to let them speak for themselves. So Bill, I'm going to come to you first, wherever you are on the call. And I'm just going to say, can you just say hi to everyone? And tell us a bit about who you are and what you do.
Sure thing. So, as Ben has kindly said, I'm Bill Dost. I've been around church in London for roughly 13 years. We opened our UK company back then. We're a multinational finance company that's 20 years old. We started off in Canada. I've walked with Jesus since I was 21 years old. So that's longer than I didn't walk with Jesus, if that makes sense. So it's been a long, long time. My company, as I said, is 21 years old. And so the dips and valleys have been amazing and great at the same time. And I say that because when you start looking at some of the things that you're doing, sometimes you don't see what the end result's going to be. And you sit there and you live in the valley for a little while. And it's God is framing you in such a way because he's bringing you through something. And a year like COVID is awesome because you know God has something even better on the outside. So to frame that a little bit better, I'm 44 years old. We have 4 kids. My wife and I have been married for almost 18 years. And running an enterprise for 20 years, you see not just one recession, but multiple recessions. And it's exciting. But as Ben has said, we wrote our first book this year. We published it. It's called How to Raise Yourself from Debt to Wealth. And it is definitely for this generation. So that's a little bit about me. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more after. But,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Amazing. Well, good. Welcome, Bill. Thanks for joining us. And then Jeff, you're somewhere around as well. Do you want to, I know, again, another familiar face, but do you just want to share with us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Ben. And am I unmuted? I guess I am. Yes. Okay. So first of all, thank you, Ben, for having me on here, and just so excited to be on here because I know it's really hard for people to believe, but actually, Bill and I were actually young, just like you once. And but a little bit of my background: I was born and raised in Chicago, and orphaned at 8 years old. Was in and out of orphanages and foster homes until I was 13. Ran away at 13 years old, lived on the streets of Chicago until I was 15, and got saved on a hippie commune, and ended up just totally turning my life around. Went back to high school, met my high school sweetheart, who I ended up marrying, and Margot and I have been married now for 45 years. So Bill, you're old enough to be my kid. And Margot and I we can never have kids, but we have loads of people that we love to mentor, and both in our business as well as church, just being able to, a lot of the people I look at as my kids. And I've been in the financial services business since I was 19. So that's been for 45 years. And again, originally from the US, I've lived in the UK and been part of Hillsong also for 17 years. Have served on the board at Hillsong for, I think, 15 years. And yeah, our business is in the UK. I very rarely ever go back to the US. My wife and I are dual citizens now. We love the UK, and Hillsong is certainly a big part of our life.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, thanks as well, Jeff, for being here. And I think a great place to start, Bill, you mentioned it briefly as you were introducing yourself, but if we're going to speak about making an impact on the upcoming generation, if we're going to talk about what it means to provide young people with opportunities and to use our expertise and our spheres of influence in business and the corporate world, we need to engage with that challenge within the current environment. And that is, of course, an environment now where the world is changing very quickly. What COVID has done to the world means that there is now more space than ever for innovation, but also there's more probably struggle and challenge that there's been for many years in the business world. So, Bill, I wonder if we could just start, and then I'll come to you after, Jeff, by talking a little bit about the last few months, the way that business has been, the direction that you think maybe that business is going in. What have been some of the highlights of the last few months? What have been some of the struggles? And crucially, are there any sort of practical lessons that you've learned coming through the COVID season of what it means to be owning, running, being part of a business?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me take a pause here and introduce a little bit about what we do. So we lend money for a living. Our organization is what we would call a non-bank finance company. And in layman's terms, what that means is we offer loans and leases when your bank says no. So we're a leasing company very similar to GE Capital, CIT, DLL. And we've been doing that for 20 years. We're very regulated. The FCA comes down to us, and you can consider us somewhat like a shadow bank. And we do that both in Canada and the United Kingdom, and shortly in the United States. So when something like COVID happens, just like when your credit card company or your bank comes to you and says, hey, we're offering forbearance to you, we have to do the same thing. So we take a company that does tens and tens and tens of millions of dollars of years, and we get told by the regulator that we had to provide forbearance. We go overnight, just like many businesses, from 100% revenues, and we dropped 90% of our revenues overnight. That was very, very exciting. From there, what happened is that we have to offer all of our staff the ability to work because we're considered not just an essential business, but the regulator told us that we could not furlough any of our senior staff because of the regulations, but also all of our money laundering officers and senior staff had to stay on full income in the office. So it added a lot of tension in the space that we were in to make sure that everybody was paid, everybody was in the office and working. So you look at that, you can say, well, that's a real challenge. What do you do? And so we do what we do best. We work with our clientele. We make sure that, first of all, our customers are taken care of, that they're healthy. The next thing we do is we make sure our staff is taken care of, that nobody is nervous, nobody is worried. When you take a massive drip and drop in your revenues, the first thing you have to do is you have to sit with your staff and remind them that this is not the first recession that we're going through. For us, in 20 years of business, it's the fifth large recession. You know, there was 2008, there was 2000 when we started, and the ones in between. Then you remind them of the vision and why we're here. Our goal is to change the lives of 1 million entrepreneurs. That's not a small vision. That's a big, big vision. It takes a lot of people and a lot of buy-in. And then the next thing you have to do is you have to sit down with all your stakeholders, all the people that lend you money, all the banks, all the people and hedge funds that have actually given you money and trusted you with that money to go and lend it to companies. And then you actually start talking to the companies themselves to make sure that they're going to get through. And not everybody's going to make it through. And so you have to do it in a compassionate way to make sure that they're going to be okay and that, you know, tomorrow is another day. And so that's what we did with our business. In the midst of all that, we all we planned and worked through a very large pivot and opening a credit card. And so something that I've been working on for 2 years with my team, we're probably about 90 days away from launching, which is a credit card which will help small enterprises, individuals, consumers repair their credit and come out of this COVID season with the ability to not just come out of debt, but save money and repair their credit. So that's what we've been spending our time with. But the big thing is to make sure that you're really investing into your staff, investing into yourself, building a good, strong foundation. And if you have a good, strong foundation in the Lord, you're not going to be shaken when the rough waters come.
Yeah.
And so we've all made sure that our staff is known where Maggie and I personally sit, where our faith is. We're always open to talk about it. Whether it's subtle or not is a different story. And sometimes you have to be subtle, and sometimes I'm pretty bold about it. And people see that it's crazy, and we live in crazy times. And so, I have no shame in that respect. I'll do anything short of sinning to see somebody saved. And, we tell people on our staff, we pray for you every day. We pray for our business every day. We ask people that are in our office that are believers to pray for the company every single day. And we are radically transparent, especially when there's times like this. We open the books for team because they're not always going to understand how crazy it is. They just think that money grows on trees. So sometimes you have to open the books and you have to say, look, here's what's going on. Here's what's happening. And we all have to be able to have a full picture. So that's kind of what the last, 7-8 months has been like. It's been interesting to say the least, but we know that we have a God that's faithful. He got us through it before. He'll get us through it again. It's exciting to watch. I got to tell you, I keep a journal of what I call documented miracles. And I've kept it for about 5 years. And this year alone, it's been 84 documented miracles God has done in our life and our business. Wow. Usually it's about a week. So, God's batting way above average in our life.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. And it's one thing, Bill, that always, whenever we have conversations, you're always bringing your faith and your work together. It can be so easy when times get rough to sort of, those two can start to diverge. But one thing that you're always doing, like you say, you're doing all of those little things. You're writing down every time you see God move. You're talking to your staff. You're speaking about how you're praying for them. And again, as this conversation develops, and we're going to talk about empowering young people, like God is a generational God. And therefore we're not doing all of this for the sake of it, right? We're doing it because our faith and our work go together. And because therefore we want to see God's heart reflected in everything that we're doing in our workplace. And part of God's heart is bringing through the generations, generation after generation. Jeff, similar question to you. What have you encountered over lockdown or over these past sort of 7-8 months? And certainly any lessons learned or any tips that you would give to us?
Thank you, Ben. And Bill, if I may say, what great leadership. I'm a real believer that leadership is everything. And the best way to judge a leader is not how they do in the good times, but how they do in the tough times. And so, when this pandemic hit, one of the first things that we did, much like Bill, is we called our staff together. And we did have the option to furlough our people. I'm also in the financial services business. And what we do is we actually offer financial planning to middle income families. Not that we can't deal with people that are wealthier, but typically the financial advisors are all after that top 5% of the market, and people in that middle income market, nobody really wants to deal with them because it's kind of small potatoes, if you will. And our philosophy is those are the people that really need financial education and financial coaching. It's amazing in school, we go through 14,000 hours of education, but you don't learn much about money. And so we called our staff together, and we, again, like Bill, talked about the vision for the future. And we also called all of our sales and management people together and talked about how that, hey guys, this is a window of opportunity. Now, most of our people in fact, all of our people were going out, seeing people in their homes to talk to people about their finances. So we had to switch overnight to Zoom and GoTo meetings and Skype And literally, we had been working on going totally paperless. And so I had our IT team accelerate that. And within 2 weeks, everything that we had was paperless. We had some of our top people who were used to working with Zoom and Skype and online. We had them do some training for people. And literally our business overnight went online. And within 30 days, Ben, we had tripled our business. It was amazing. Now, a big reason for that was a lot of our people were part-time, and they've been with us 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years. All of a sudden, they're furloughed from their full-time job. Now they're going, hey, I'm going to give Genistar a shot at really going full-time. So our productivity went up. Plus, they were at home calling everybody else who was at home. So their interviews went from 2 or 3 a week to 5 or 6 a day. And our productivity, we had 2 months, would have been July and August, where we literally quadrupled the amount of volume and recruiting that we were doing from prior, from pre-COVID. And now we've kind of flattened out a little bit, but even the numbers that we're doing now are about 2.5 times what we were doing prior to COVID. We've continued to hire additional staff. We've just hired a new in-house attorney to handle some other things going on. And so our business, unlike many other businesses, we're having a record year. I've never seen in my 40 plus years in financial planning, I've never seen people more shaken up about getting their lives together financially than any other time. In my 40 years, I've never seen people more receptive to how to become an entrepreneur and not be at the mercy of someone laying them off and making them redundant. So, our business has really been just incredible, and I'm so grateful, for really where we're at. And we certainly, like Bill, there are times, to really talk about the Lord. Then there's other times that we're not as bold, if you will, not that we're ashamed of it, but through our business over the last 40 years, we've led over 5,000 people to the Lord through our business, just by them seeing our lives, watching the fact that we don't operate by emotion, but we operate by principle. And amazing. I think one of the really strong things through this COVID, that for people that are non-believers in our team, they've actually said to our staff, how can you guys be so confident of the future? And when this thing first happened, I said to everybody, I said, listen, guys, this is not the end of the world. And if it is, there's nothing you can do about it. And so people know what my faith is. I certainly don't know how people can kind of go through this without faith, without a belief in God. But it's our business has been, I'm very, very grateful for where we're at, where the company's at. Our people's incomes are at an all-time high. We're going back to all of our clients. We've got tens of thousands of clients, doing free reviews with them, and just really trying to do something that's of value to both our staff as well as our clients.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think what I love about having you guys, both of you guys on today, is we hear so much negative news at the moment. But I think I already knew when you guys accepted to speak on this, that it would be such an amazing encouragement that behind the scenes and in many businesses, there is great stuff going on. And there are opportunities. What I've heard from both of you is that you're very much not concentrating on what you don't have right now, but you're concentrating on actually where are there new opportunities? What can I work on? Bill, you mentioned that actually the last few months has given you like real time to work on the credit card product that maybe you wouldn't have had otherwise if business was continuing as normal. And same with you, Jeff, just like utilizing the opportunities, the extra capacity that came your way. I think the other two keys that I picked up from both of you there, which just, have challenged me. is number one, both of you instinctively said we always reaffirm the vision. We helped people retain their perspective of why we exist and what we're trying to achieve. And I think that's probably not only relevant to business, but it's relevant to whoever you are in whatever industry you're in. It's reminding yourself of the perspective that you need, the godly perspective, the perspective of hope, the perspective of what God could do through you and through your business and through your industry. If you can retain that vision of why you're doing what you are doing. And I think that to me stirred me. It's easy to sort of get lost a bit in the day-to-day, in watching the news, hearing a lot of negative reports, and forgetting that God is still on the throne. You know, Jesus is still there. There is still a vision for your businesses, for your life. And if you can retain that perspective, it's invaluable. I also loved what you said there, Jeff, about that that people look at you and they see that you don't operate by emotion, but you operate by principle. And I think what an amazing, that's one for my journal, to try and always be operating out of the principles I know to be true, rather than the emotion of the moment. I think even from that, like, even if we stop there, there would be so much to take away and ponder and think about. But now, you know, as I mentioned at the start, I would love to almost move this wisdom, move these thought processes in the direction of, okay, we've got some young people listening today, and at the same time, we've got a whole load of people that are just in various industries. So let's hone our focus a little bit on, okay, in this environment where there are maybe new opportunities, there's maybe new struggles, there's a need for innovation, there's a need to be founded on the word of God, there's a need to operate by principle and not by emotion. How can we, as people in the workplace, best empower, equip, look after the young people within our world, maybe young people that don't have opportunities afforded to them? I'm keeping this question as wide as possible because I think there's a lot of ways this conversation could go. But how can we constantly have a mindset of the generation that's coming up behind us? I think that's probably the quickest way to phrase it. Bill, do you have any thoughts on that?
I do. Thanks, Ben. I think, so I'm an avid rock climber and I'm an avid marathon runner. So I run every day. I rock climb 4 to 5 times a week. And then I work a lot and I spend a lot of time with my kids, and my kids are involved in both sports. And it's the same thing everywhere I go. You've got two groups of people: the ones that want to progress at any cost, and the ones that want to do it right. And I see it in running, I see it in rock climbing, I see it in the business environment as well. And I try to really instill this in my kids. Build a good, strong, solid foundation first. And when you build a great foundation first, everything will come. You might move slower in the beginning. And in fact, if you do it right, you will move slower in the beginning. But when you build that solid foundation, everything will build solidly above that. But if you build a really weak foundation and you're just going for the glory of it, or if you're just going for, to progress to that next level, you're not going to be in it for the long haul. And we see this time and time again. Whether it was the €2 billion fraud that Wirecard did this year because they wanted to cut corners, or whether it's that guy that had to, dope up so he could win X amount of Tour de France, or whatever you want to look at. When you try to cut corners, it doesn't work and you get caught. And anything, and it doesn't have to be caught in the eyes of the world. It can just be, you just fail to create something that has lasting value. And so whenever we bring somebody into our offices, the first thing we want to teach them is foundation building. Learn it right. Because if you learn it right and you learn to do it right, then you'll create a foundation that will last forever. And that's how somebody builds a career. Not multiple careers, because you have to jump around, but a good career. And so even today, when I was with my son at the gym and we spent some time in there, it's, well, Daddy, I want to go do this harder climb. I want to go do this harder climb. It's, well, stop. Let's go do all the basic stuff first. Build a good foundation, build good technique, and then let's move to the next one. And then let's move to the next one. And so that's the biggest, most important thing I can say, is that when we bring new young people in, I want to build a good, strong foundation with them, whether they leave me or not, and whether they go on to be great, successful people. You build a great foundation. That's how you build something great in life. And then we can apply it into our own biblical studies on our own. build a great, strong foundation in the Word. Ground yourself, and you will be not just around, but you'll be a man or a woman of wisdom, of understanding, and then you'll be able to apply that and help other people do the same. You become a mentor. So take it for what it's worth.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant, Bill. I think so often, well, it's easy to sort of get into quite a worldly mindset, I guess, in the business and the corporate world a lot, where the concept is that, you know, the youngest person in the organization is just there to do the most boring work, right? It's the classic, they're sent to make the tea, they're sent to do the photocopying. But I think what you've encouraged everyone here to do is actually those young people, the potential that is within them, the gifting that is within them. If you can help young people in whatever sphere of influence you have to build a really strong foundation, then you're not using someone that is younger than you just for your own gain, but you're taking the Paul mentality that I talked about at the beginning, and you're actually discipling someone. You are helping someone else to grow. You are bringing them into your business or your corporate context, not only for your benefit or the business's benefit, but you are bringing them in because you know that there is amazing potential in a young person. And if you can help them, if you can teach them to build a foundation, a strong foundation, then you're setting them up for life. As you say, you're setting them up for a career rather than just to do a season in a certain workplace. Have I got that right, Bill?
Yeah. You know, it said in Timothy, and Pastor Gary said it, I think, just yesterday, don't despise the day of humble beginnings. Right? So, you know, it's wisdom all around. But yeah, you nailed it on the head.
Yeah, that's cool. And what about you, Jeff? How can we empower young people? How can we equip them? How can we use our influence to help them?
Well, first of all, I think Bill said it beautifully. You know, by the way, Ben, I'm really great, and I mean this sincerely. I'm really grateful that you put him on before me, because then all I have to do is just sort of, you know, open that up, you know. So I appreciate that. But as Bill was talking, I was thinking of the scripture where Paul says to Timothy, he said, Timothy, the things that you've heard and seen in me, do. And that really is what mentoring people is all about, is being able to pass the baton on to others. I mean, I look back on my career and I look at the mentors that I've had in my life, and I'm so grateful that the guys that I did have were not the quick buck con artists. And as Bill was talking about them, I was thinking of people, Bill, that you see hop from this job to that job, this business to that business. They do this, they do that. They're all over the place. And yet what God really wants in our lives is stability. Sure, he wants creativity. And for me, I mean, I've just been so blessed to have mentors in my life, people that I was able to find, especially in my early to mid 20s, that I found that happened to be believers, the majority of them. But I have to say, in business, every single one of the mentors that I had, always that was always their philosophy was, Jeff, there's only one way to do it the right way, with honesty, with integrity. You know, Solomon said, a good name is better than silver and gold. And it really is. I always tell our team, I say, listen, guys, I would rather remain a small company, but do it the right way and have integrity, than to go do something big, but we have to compromise our ethics and our values. But boy, we can make a lot of money. That has no appeal to me whatsoever. I would rather build something solid. You know, the old saying, measure twice, cut once. And I think what happens is, and I can tell you this, I mean, that, you know, especially in my youth, I was always in a hurry to get things done. And fortunately, my wife, my mentors helped me to kind of slow things down. Sometimes you have to slow things down in order to be able to speed up. And I think for me, like this pandemic, really what it's done for me also, Ben, it's given me additional time to think about the future. You know, we were always in such a go mode And now we've had some real time to kind of reflect on where are we going as a company? How can I offer more value to the consumer, to our reps? And I want to just give you one quote. It doesn't come from me. Actually, it comes from a guy by the name of Napoleon Hill. I'm sure Bill will be familiar with him and probably some of the others on this call. And here's what he says in an interview with a guy by the name of Andrew Carnegie. And he said, with every seed of adversity, there is an equivalent or a greater benefit. In other words, from a scriptural standpoint, is that no matter what temptation that you're going through, no matter what you're going through, God will make a way of escape, and all things work together for good to them that love the Lord. And when your heart is in the right place and you're a vessel, and you're sure, hey, listen, I go through tough times. Do I doubt? Absolutely. Within myself. I try not to show it to my team. But I also know that ultimately my life, my business, everything about me is really ultimately in God's hands.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. You reminded me as well there, Jeff, of the quote, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with people. And just that, the concept, that principle of rather do it properly, rather do it a bit slower, but in this context, but do it in a way where you are valuing the younger generation. You're actually building a legacy behind you, because that will take longer. Like there's no doubt about it. There's quick ways, there's shortcuts, there's compromises to make money fast, but you're going to end up down that line with nothing behind you. Whereas if, like what I love that both of you guys have shared, if you live and build your work life and your work career with integrity, you do it a bit slower and your eyes are open to where can I provide opportunity for others? Where can I bring other people through? Like everyone now has quoted Paul to Timothy, like it's a beautiful like mentoring relationship that we can find in the Bible. And I would encourage you, like if you're interested in this sort of thing, how can I grow in my foundation? How can I look to mentor people? Go read the books of 1 Timothy and 2 Timothy and just watch how Paul speaks to Timothy, the way that he encourages Timothy, the things that he draws out, the things that he challenges, because I think it provides a beautiful model for us to pick up some principles on what it means to mentor those that are coming through behind us, which is a big part of everything we've been talking about today. Like if we are going to use our influence, if we are going to use whatever sphere we're in order to bring through the young people in our society, and especially those like we love and we should focus on those that do not have the privilege where they are able to actually just step into those internships or step into those roles just by nature of how they grew up or their background. We're here to look and say, God values every single young person. God has put a gift on every single young person's life. And therefore we as people already in the working world, we want to look and make sure that we are making opportunities for those that maybe do not come from those privileged positions. Right. That's who we are and what we do.
Hey, Ben, so I think one of the most valuable things ever given to me, 35 years ago, was to read the book of Proverbs. And I got to say, it's the best business book I've ever read. As you and Bill were talking, I was reminded where Solomon said, steady plodding brings prosperity. Hasty speculation brings poverty. And I read the book of Proverbs at least once or twice a year through the entire from the start to finish. And I've been doing that for over 35 years. In my opinion, the best business book that there is out there is the book of Proverbs.
Amazing. That's a great bit of advice. All right, well, we've got about 16 minutes left in the session. So like I said at the beginning, if you guys watching, if any of you have got questions, feel free to start popping them in the chat now. And we can just start this last 15 minutes or so. We can just run through some questions. If something's popped to your mind, a thought or something you'd like to hear from these guys, just put it in the chat. And while you're doing that, let me start off with a question that's just jumped to my mind. If we just flick it for a moment, Bill and Jeff, and we imagine, I know we've got some young people listening, imagine I am a young person, I'm ambitious, I want to build a career. We've touched upon a couple of things, but what advice would you give to a young person on this call that's maybe feeling a bit worried about the future, the job market right now, but they know that God has gifted them and they want to step into a career? Is there anything that you would encourage them with, Bill?
Yeah, I remember, Ben, in 1981, interest rates on mortgages were 13%. It was insane. And I remember that the economy was not great, and I was getting ready to start my own business. And the guy that was my mentor, I went to him. I was 24. I was broke, and his name was Bob. And I said, Bob, how can I become a millionaire like you and do it honestly and do it as quick as possible, but also do it the right way? And I never forget the advice that he gave me. And that's the advice I would give everybody on this call. And that was this: find an expert in whatever it is that you want to do and do exactly what they tell you to do. And that's what I did. And literally, I went from age 24 to age 31, 24 broke. I was a millionaire at age 31. But I found a mentor and I listened to them, and I did exactly what they told me to do. And there was nothing illegal or immoral that they told me to do. Now, I do have to tell you, Ben, there was a dirty 4-letter word, excuse me for using it here. It was called work. And so, that's what I did, is I found an expert in what I wanted to do. I found a mentor, and I was totally coachable to what they said.
Yeah, that's a brilliant piece of advice. And I think where else, like the church community should be a place where you can find mentors, right? It's a great place to start. We've just chatted to 2 guys today, but there are multiple businessmen and women within our community, multiple people in executive positions who really care about the younger generation. And so, there's opportunities, and we're working on building more opportunities as well as to how we can connect young people to mentors. So that conversation is going to continue, because I think, Jeff, you're bang on there. What about you, Bill? Any advice that you would give to a young person in the current moment?
Yeah, absolutely. So now I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. So the biggest advice I would give anybody is find something that you're good at, find something that you love, and take a chance, jump on it, right? Like, there's never going to be a perfect timing or a perfect place or a perfect opportunity, because it's now, it's right now. The best time to start something was yesterday. The next best time is today. So you're never going to have, perfection at your fingertips. Entrepreneurs are successful because they took a chance. That's the reality of it. Now, you're saying, well, I don't want to be an entrepreneur. I want to go and work at that company or this company. Okay, great. What skills do you need to have? Focus on becoming that person. So if you need to be a lawyer, well, Ben, what did you have to do? You had to go to school, right? But before you do that, you need to go read. You need to go study on certain things. If you want to be, a minister, you got to go study the Bible. You got to go to seminary. But you got to start today, not tomorrow, not I'm going to do it in a week. And so the reality is, you need to have a growth mindset. You need to have initiative, and you need to get going, because time is running out. And that's the one great equalizer that we all have. We can't fight it. We can't beat it. And it's fleeting. And the greatest thing that I hope you never have to do is to meet the person you could have been. It would be heartbreaking. Wow. And Jeff, just to your point about Proverbs, a pastor of mine had told me, I think 10 years ago, that she read the book of Proverbs every month. And so we started doing that, Maggie and I. So part of our morning devotional is we read one chapter of the book of Proverbs every single day. And we've been doing that, I want to say, about 10 years. I don't feel like we've even cracked the ice of all the wisdom in that book.
Wow.
So we're right there with you on that book. I think it's the best book for business and for anybody, really. So
I think that's an amazing takeaway. We've had a great question come through. What's been the most challenging thing? Obviously, both of you guys have experienced great success. What's been the most challenging thing that's come with that success? Yeah, go on, Jeff.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Bill. I think you were starting.
Yeah, ego, absolutely. So I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. I became a millionaire very, very early. We had a lot of money, and it went to my head. And it went to my head really quickly. I was a Christian. Well, I'm a Christian, was a Christian then as well. And, you know, the ego hit real quick, real hard. I had a big, big head, and God let me have my ego for a long while. And, you know, I didn't handle it well. I was not proud of that person that I became. And it took a long time for me to really tame that beast. I think I could have been a lot better and a lot wiser. The really good thing about that, though, is that I've lived being that person. And I've had to walk those miles. And so I'm a lot more compassionate when I see it in other people. I liken myself a lot of times to when I read Paul, and he says, I was the best at this and I was the best at that, and I come from this family and I come from that. I'm like, yeah, I understand, because I used to do that, right? I had 8 degrees and I had this privilege here and this privilege here, and that was why I succeeded. And I had to go through some really humbling things, but you have to be very, very careful. You have to be grounded in the Word every single day. You can't let it slip. And so today I don't, every morning I have a routine and I will not let it slip. And the most important thing about a routine is it can't be routine for routine's sake. It has to be relationship. It has to be, I want to be with God because it's with God, not because I'm being rote about it. Right.
Yeah.
So it's, you have to want to be with him because it's about being with him, not because, hey, you're my roommate, God, and I should be doing this out of obligation.
Yeah. Wow, that's phenomenal. A call to humility. I think that's always so challenging. Jeff, anything to add on that? And then we've got a couple more questions.
I think, Ben, what's interesting is mine was exactly the opposite, which was, am I good enough to be able to do something that could really be successful? Because I wasn't born on the right side of the tracks. I don't have it, Bill, you've got 8 degrees. I have a temperature. I mean, I went to 2 years at university, but I didn't complete it. And so I think for me, Ben, the biggest challenge was really between my 2 ears, which was, my father committed suicide when I was a kid. My mother drank herself to death. I was an orphan. I was living out on the streets. Is Jeff Lestz really good enough? And so, and I think also that because of the church I was in when I first got saved, unfortunately, the pastor believed the poorer that you were, the closer you were to God, and that money would corrupt you, which it can, as Bill is saying. In fact, I think it's really easy for money to get you off, off the right track. But that's the reason why that it's discipline. And so for me, it was getting my head screwed on right of God, how can I enter into covenant with you to where as I prosper, I can really become a kingdom builder. And I can really, I'm not just going to make money to have a big house, a big car, a big this, a big that, but I really want to have a heart for the kingdom. And so I think what's happened is not only did I become a millionaire at age 31, but maybe the more important thing is I've stayed a millionaire for 31 years,
Yeah.
And the reason is it goes back to what Bill was saying, which is I kept my heart in check. I'm not saying that there weren't times that I wasn't tempted to get off track, but I knew that God had blessed me, had prospered me with a purpose. And
Amazing.
The purpose wasn't just so that Jeff could live the life of luxury. There's nothing wrong in having a nice, beautiful life. But my heart, I get excited about making money, not just so that Jeff can, do bigger things himself, but so that I can really help support the vision of the kingdom.
Amazing. Yeah, that's beautiful. All right, there's great questions coming through, actually. Here's one. A number of young people I speak to talk about needing to pay the bills, so they feel stuck in their in any job, and they therefore can't find a way to move forward with their dreams. What would you guys say to those people?
Well, I tell you what, I'll jump in first, because what I did, Ben, when I was 24, is I actually did something part-time while I kept my full-time job. It was called making a living while I was getting rich. And so I was working 40 hours a week at a full-time job. And then I started doing this on the weekends and the evenings. And so was I burning the candle at both ends for a little while? Absolutely. But, if you got the want to, you'll find the how to. And so in addition to that, I started working in that industry. So I really started studying it. And I didn't just quit my job, walk away, and go, oh, gee, I'm just going to throw caution to the wind. I did it very planned. I got out of debt. My first year, I made enough money to pay all my credit cards off, pay my cars off, brought my expenses down. So, I did it with wisdom, but I did it on a part-time basis.
Yeah. Brilliant. That four-letter word, WORK, is coming up again, Jeff.
You know what, Ben, there was probably 6 months where I went on 4 hours sleep a night.
Wow.
But here's a principle I learned. You can either play now and pay later, or you can pay now and play later.
Nice. Yeah. It's really
It's a temporary sacrifice.
Yeah. And that all comes down to, and I know we won't be able to get into it here, but I know, Jeff, you worked really hard on things like the financial freedom course and actually teaching people great principles with their money, however much money you've got. And I think that's a really big one. That really helped me, that course, to just get some things in line, to work some principles into practice. And I think it's certainly something that I would recommend. And I know at the end, go on,
Ben, can I just mention that I'm going to gift to everybody your Journey to Financial Freedom is a book that I wrote, and another one on biblical finance called True Riches. And Ben, I've already sent you this morning the ebooks on that. You can share that with everyone. Unfortunately, my publisher won't let me do this one, but this is a brand new one I just did, Against All Odds, the remarkable true story of how a street kid became a millionaire. So I would encourage everybody, to get a copy. It's on Amazon, but the other two books we'll send to you totally free of charge.
Absolutely. That's so generous, Jeff. And so for anyone that's registered, so your email address, we've got your email address for this breakout. We're going to send those two ebooks out probably beginning of next week to you guys, so that you've got them. All right, we've got a couple of minutes left. So Bill, I'm just going to ask you one more question, and then we'll wrap up. And this is, how do you stay disciplined and consistent even when you haven't been seeing results?
I'm a big fan of something called the grind. So again, this goes back to whether you're sporty or business-like or even in faith. The grind is one of the most important things I believe in life. So when you're an athlete, the grind means that you got to push through the times when you don't see anything happening, because every time you're doing what they call a rep, whether it's pushing up or whether you're going through a climb, you're actually having progress when you don't see it. When we look at it in our faith, it's the same concept of God is doing something even when I can't see it. So I read the Bible for me. I read it every day because I want to be closer to Jesus. That doesn't mean that every moment of every day I'm getting wiser and wiser. But you know what happens is that over time, that wisdom's going to spill out. Why? Because out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth will speak. So the more you pack it in, the more you pack it in with the right heart, and the more you want to know Jesus, eventually it can't help but come out, right? So it's the same thing in your business. You may not receive results today, tomorrow, the day after. But what will happen is this concept of slowly, suddenly. It's a hockey stick graph. And that's what happens is that you don't see results for a year, another year, and then suddenly, boom. I'm sure Jeff teaches this every time when somebody joins as a new salesman and his company, that you're not going to see results immediately, but when you do them, you're going to see them amazingly, because it just takes time to build. You build your foundation building at first, your funnel building, and then you'll see results. As an entrepreneur for 20 plus years, you will not see results in the beginning, and the real results take real time. So yeah, the grind is the most important thing. Other people call it the flywheel effect. You know, you can talk about pumping water out of a well, whatever analogy you want. There's a time dilation that has to occur.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And what a great way to end as well. I think it's a phenomenal answer. Jeff, I've heard you before talk about how the overnight success in your business took 10 years. And it's a great business principle, right? That actually there's a lot of work to do at the base of the iceberg, and people will only ever see the top. So that is the motivation. That's the heart to say, stay disciplined, even if you can't see anything right now. Guys, we could go on for another hour so easily. There's so much wisdom that you guys have brought today, so much gold, so much that we can take away and think about and ponder on for our own lives, principles to put into practice, but crucially as well, I think just stirred to make sure that we're using whatever sphere of influence we have, as you guys have demonstrated and modeled by example, to bring young people through to be a great example and role model and mentor to many. And so I just want to thank you guys for taking the time today to join the course, to join the breakout. Loads of people on the chat now just sharing their thanks to you guys. It's so appreciated. We appreciate you in our church. We appreciate everything that you bring and everything that you are. And so thanks so much, guys. And for everyone who's joined as well, I appreciate your time too. Thanks for coming to join us. You know, we're always thinking about new and creative ideas to help young people in industry, in business, in the corporate world. So feel free to contact me. We can talk if you've got ideas, if there are internships that you know that we can point young people to, whatever it is, you can get in touch with me, and I think we can have a great conversation about that sort of thing. But it's been an amazing hour. I don't want to take any more of your time. So thanks very much, everyone, for joining. We are over and out, and we'll catch you guys at the evening session of Young Leaders Lab tonight. Thanks.
Thanks, Ben. Great leadership.